The rain had not stopped since dawn. It drummed against the courthouse windows with the rhythm of an accusation. Every drop sounded like a reminder that truth, once betrayed, never returns the same. I sat behind the bench, robe heavy, pen still. In front of me, two faces, one calm, one trembling. The case was titled State versus Morgan Lee, but to me, it felt more like truth versus trust. They said it began with a promise. A man swore to protect his partner's future, to manage her funds while she recovered from illness. What unfolded instead was betrayal, so subtle it nearly passed as love. As I looked through the documents, I sensed this was not merely a civil dispute, it was a war between affection and deceit. And I, once again, was to decide which was which. It started 2 years earlier, in the heart of autumn. The victim, Ms. Eliza Green, had undergone surgery. During her recovery, she entrusted her fiancé, Morgan Lee, with power of attorney over her finances, a temporary act of faith. But when she returned to health, the accounts were empty. The house sold. The joint savings dissolved into air. Morgan claimed it was all for her benefit, that he had invested in a venture meant to double their wealth. It failed, he said, but I never meant harm. Eliza said otherwise. He looked me in the eyes and lied, she whispered during testimony. He promised to keep everything safe. He sold our home the day I went under anesthesia. That line haunted me. The day she went under anesthesia. It wasn't just a theft, it was a symbolic act of betrayal, done when the victim was most defenseless. The collision wasn't physical, it was moral. A collision between love's illusion and Greed's reality. When the case opened, the air in the courtroom carried tension thick enough to taste. Morgan walked in with a smooth confidence, the kind that made jurors uneasy. Eliza, by contrast, moved as though gravity itself had turned cruel. Her hands trembled slightly when she sat down, clutching the edge of her statement like a shield. "Your Honor," began the prosecutor, "this case is about betrayal masquerading as care." He painted a portrait of deception layered with affection, a lover who preyed upon the faith of another. The defense countered calmly, "It's a failed investment, not a crime. There was consent, trust, and risk. Nothing more." I watched them argue, but I listened to silence. The silence between their words, the look Morgan avoided, the tears Eliza suppressed. Those were the real testimonies. The court transcript would never capture the tremor in her voice when she said his name, or the flicker in his eyes when he heard it. Cross-examination is where masks fall. Under pressure, truth sweats. I leaned forward slightly as the prosecutor rose, eyes fixed on Morgan. "Mr. Lee," he began, "you claim you invested her money for both your futures. Tell us, why did you transfer the remaining balance into a private account the day before the market crashed?" Morgan paused. His lips parted, but no sound came. The defense objected. I overruled. "Answer the question, Mr. Lee." "It was precautionary," he said finally. "I didn't want to lose it all." The prosecutor took a slow step closer. "And did you tell Ms. Green about this precaution?" "No." "Why not?" "She was still recovering." The prosecutor's tone darkened. Recovering or vulnerable? Morgan's silence filled the room. Eliza's eyes glistened. It was then I noticed something, guilt not just of crime, but of conscience. A man who didn't regret the theft, only the exposure. Later, when Eliza took the stand, her voice was steady but hollow. He said, "Rest easy, I'll take care of everything." And I believed him. Because that's what love does, it makes you blind to the contract beneath the emotion. I wrote that line in my notes. Love makes you blind to the contract beneath emotion. 5. The verdict. The courtroom was silent when I returned from chambers. The sound of the gavel would decide not just legality, but morality. I looked at Morgan, no longer defiant, just empty. Eliza sat motionless, as though hope itself had left her long ago. I spoke slowly. "This court finds the defendant, Morgan Lee, guilty of financial fraud and breach of fiduciary duty." The words echoed, sharp as thunder. But I did not stop there. "However," I continued, "justice is not only punishment. It is acknowledgement. The law cannot heal the betrayal, but it can declare it for what it was, an act of greed disguised as care. I sentenced him to 5 years imprisonment and full restitution. As the bailiff led him away, Morgan turned to Eliza. Their eyes met, one filled with regret, the other with resolve. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. When the courtroom emptied, I stayed behind. The rain had stopped. Only the faint hum of the city filled the silence. I thought about all the promises people make under the illusion of forever, and how easily they fracture when tested by power or profit. Justice, I realized, isn't about proving who's right. It's about revealing who's real. In that courtroom, the law did what it could, but truth did what it must. As I closed my journal, I wrote one final line. A promise broken in silence echoes louder than a lie spoken aloud. And outside, the sky cleared, as though even heaven needed a verdict.